All right. Good morning, everyone, on this happy Good Friday. Hopefully, it clears up to be a very beautiful day for a beautiful weekend for our second to last week of session. So, week 12 is almost completed. Probably, again, one of our more productive weeks dealing with some of our most important issues. As we said from the very beginning of session, we had three goals. One, to focus on growing our economy no matter what, finding ways to make Maryland more affordable, and protecting Marylanders from what has been all too often a lawless Trump administration. Legislation that we have passed out of the Senate this year has centered on this agenda. A key part of that work has been strengthening protections for workers across Maryland, ensuring that as our economy grows, it works for everyone. During the session, the Senate has passed several meaningful bills to support organized labor and strengthen our middle class, because we know for a fact that strong unions are the backbone of a healthy middle class, one in which all people can earn a living to support their families and work in a safe and secure environment. Our speakers here today will talk about a few specific bills that we're championing, one of which the Senate Finance Committee will be voting early next week. But I want to highlight a few of these bills myself. First is Senate Bill 417, the Maryland Worker Freedom Act, which protects employees from being compelled to join employer-sponsored meetings on political or religious matters. This critical legislation reinforces a simple principle. Workers should not have to choose between their jobs and what they believe. Through Senate Bill 831, we're advancing a package to strengthen state labor standards. This includes higher penalties for violations of child labor laws. It also fills the gaps in our labor protection regime. The goal is to protect all workers and set very clear expectations for employers. Maryland must remain a state where workers are treated fairly and safely. Together, these efforts reflect our commitment to strengthening our middle class here in Maryland and ensuring that we have a competitive economy, one that supports workers, strengthens families, and creates long-term stability. Before I turn it over to our other speakers, I want to note that the Senate had a very robust and meaningful and truly thoughtful debate on energy here in the state of Maryland on the Senate floor yesterday. I expect that the Senate will take the bills up on third reading on Monday, and we'll continue to work through the differences with the House to have a significant package complete by the end of next week. I want to thank every member of the Senate and every committee for their hard work this session. The hours have been long and certainly the issues more complex than ever, but the commitment to serving Marylanders has remained consistent, particularly around our very important agenda for this year. With that, I'm thrilled to be joined here today with incredible legislative and labor leaders, Chair Beidel, who has overseen many of these labor initiatives, and Senator McCray, who has been a champion of strengthening labor unions for his entire career, are here with members of our labor community that I will have them introduce. And with that, I want to hand it over to Chair Beidel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure to be here today and talk about the work that the Finance Committee has done this year. The Finance Committee has been intentional in our work this year to support legislation for our workers in the state. We have focused on our workers and been champions for their issues. It's been an honor to work with all the various union representatives, and you'll see some of them are here today. We worked with the firefighters, the IAFF, AFT, SEIU, AFL-CIO, IBEW, SMART, and AFSCME. The Finance Committee had a busy year with over 300 Senate bills and now 200 House bills, and the members have worked diligently, and we're pleased with our results. I'm going to talk about a couple of the bills that the President didn't mention, and one is the firefighters' overtime bill, Senate Bill 445, and we passed a workman's comp bill about presumptions for hypertension, Senate Bill 90. We also did collective bargaining for non-tenured faculty, and that's Senate Bill 6, and it expands the bargaining rights for non-tenured faculty in our public university. These educators are essential to our academic system. The bill ensures they have a voice in working conditions, compensation, and stability. It is an important step towards strengthening our higher education workforce and improving student outcomes. We also passed collective bargaining for grad students, it will grant collective bargaining to our graduate students in our state's two research universities, the University of Maryland College Park and the University of Maryland Baltimore County. Graduate students are critical to these universities and should be able to organize if they desire to ensure fair treatment and access the resources. We're also working on clinical hospital staffing, which I believe will pass this week, prevailing wage fix, the energy bill, and then binding arbitration for AFSCME, Senate Bill 28. And on Tuesday, I'm sure the committee will pass two-man crew, and we're pleased to have the House bill come over. So thank you for your time, and I'll now introduce Senator Cory McCray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. President. First, I just want to start by saying it brings me joy to my heart to be able to be on the stage with people like Mike, Courtney, Jeff, and David, knowing that they're my presidents, directors, and on the ground each and every day, making sure that we move in concert for working families. I also think that it's important to understand, and I want to lean in and lift up my chair, Pam Beidle, but also my Senate President, Bill Ferguson, because those things do not happen by themselves. It happens in partnership. And I say that as an electrician. I heard my Senate President say it. There would be no Senator Cory McCray if there was not for the IBEW. When I think about the opportunity to be able to make a living wage, to be able to have affordable health care, but hopefully one time there comes retiring with dignity, I just say thank you, thank you, thank you for putting this moment together. I stand here in reference to Senate Bill 28. Senate Bill 28 gives our state workers the opportunity not just have collective bargaining, but also have binding arbitration. And I know as an electrician already with binding arbitration that it not only saves resources, it also saves time. It helps move in the right direction. And we need that for our state workers that are on the line each and every day, front lines, I should say, making sure that our state moves in a posture that Marylanders actually deserve. So once again, just thank you for this opportunity, Mr. President. I'd be remiss if I did not thank AFSCME. I did not thank this woman named Denise, who have fought years and years and years to come to this moment and actually see it get across the finish line. So thank you all that actually helped us get it across the finish line.
Next, we have Jeff Buttle of Firefighters.
Good morning. Jeff Buttle, President of the Professional Firefighters of Maryland. Today, we're proud to recognize the hard work on Senate Bill 90 and Senate Bill 445, two important pieces of legislation for Maryland's firefighters and public safety professionals. For too long, the men and women who protect our communities have faced difficult barriers when dealing with the very real consequences of their service. Senate Bill 90 changes that by strengthening the existing workers' compensation presumption that has long established hypertension as a job-related condition. It affirms what firefighters have always known. The demands of the profession takes a lasting toll on their health, and they deserve support, not challenges, when they seek care. Senate Bill 445 delivers another long overdue reform by establishing one clear statewide standard for overtime. No longer will firefighters face a patchwork of inconsistent rules that vary from department to department. This legislation will ensure fairness, consistency, and transparency across the board. It guarantees that firefighters are compensated properly for the long hours they work and provide clear accountability when they are not. Just as importantly, it gives workers confidence that the rules are the same everywhere and that fairness is not optional, but rather guaranteed. Together, these legislative priorities represent a major step forward for Maryland's workers' rights. They send a simple message. If you risk your life to protect others, you deserve to be protected as well. I would like to thank Senate President Ferguson, Finance Committee Chair Beidle, Senator Kramer for their leadership in advancing these important initiatives. Maryland is moving in the right direction, and we will continue to work together to advance policies that respect the sacrifice and hard work of our public safety professionals. Thank you.
And next, we have David Pendleton of SMART, our transportation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You know, my name is David Pendleton. I'm Safety and Legislative Director for the Transportation Division of SMART. And just wanted to say that for us working men and women, we're all too familiar with workplace safety and conditions taking a backseat to corporate profits, especially when your employer generates billions of dollars a year and is worth tens of billions of dollars more. It takes a leader with a special kind of fortitude to stand up to the big boys and say that Maryland will put the safety of your employees and the communities we serve ahead of your profits. As such, we will never be able to thank Senate President Bill Ferguson enough for his leadership, for being that special kind of leader who comes to Annapolis every day and fights for everyday Marylanders. We're grateful to Chair Beidle and Senator McCray, as well as Delegate Dana Stein, for their advocacy and the movement for safe roadways in the state of Maryland. This proactive legislation, HB 852, two-person crew legislation, is proactive rail safety legislation that will ensure quick action will be taken in the event of an emergency on the rail lines. With passage of this bill, we Marylanders should be able to sleep just a little easier at night knowing that our trains are safely staffed and that we'll be able, like certified professional individuals, that will be able to respond to an emergency. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, most importantly, for the work that you do to represent Maryland workers every single day. We have representatives here from ATU, AFL-CIO, our firefighters, but this is an incredible sampling of the wonderful labor leaders that we have in Maryland who have helped to build this economy and strengthen Maryland's middle class. With that, let me open up to questions that folks may have.
Mr. President, I wanted to ask about some of the amendments added yesterday to the energy bill, specifically on the line extension allowances. I've heard some concern that, taking a PSC decision and essentially attempting to reverse it, that was seen to save, gas customers broadly a good amount of money, but understand that it does affect development in the state. Can you talk more about your thoughts on the line extension allowances?
I trust the wisdom of the committee, and I think that they looked at this issue from the same lens that we've been trying to balance all of the energy policy. There's three legs of the stool. There's sustainability, reliability, and affordability, and we have to have an effective balance. What I think we've seen is that affordability has become the #1 concern. And so this session, as we have tried to make things more affordable in energy markets, this was one of the policies that the committee deemed an important one to move forward to try to protect and provide additional payment plans so that folks would have a more affordable opportunity as development is happening.
Was this discussed in committee? My understanding was it was a House bill originally from Republicans, but didn't have a full Senate hearing. Unless I'm missing something.
I believe that committee members had the conversation as a part of the robust conversation of energy policies that were being discussed for the bill.
I just want to ask one more too. It seems like, obviously now we've got a Senate version of that bill and a House version that have some pretty, significant differences, I would say. It sounds like, the House is trying to stand firm on some of their policy choices on things like the, salaries for supervisors and forecast test years. I mean, how do you think that conference committee is going to go? And obviously you guys stand by your bill and they stand by theirs. So we've got about, a week and some change here to figure this out.
Yeah, this is the heart and soul of the legislative process. I'm really proud of the work that our committees did. The beauty of democracy is that there are different ideas. At the beginning of session, we had a number of conversations, and the good news is that we fundamentally agree on the headline, core, fundamental purposes and framework of the bill. Now it's into the details, and so I feel certain and entirely confident that we will get through these details with solutions that are in the best interest of Maryland ratepayers.
Following up on Christine's question, are there hard lines in those details that the Senate is prepared to not give in on?
Look, we are, this is the legislative process. I think it is really important to have a conversation that's about interest alignment, and what we know is that the interests are aligned here by focusing on affordability for Maryland families. And so that is what is going to drive every decision that we make in the conference committee as we move forward, assuming that the bill's passed on third reader in the Senate and that a conference committee is established. I don't want to predetermine something that hasn't happened yet, but I feel very confident that our hard line is to protect Maryland ratepayers.
Mr. President, what can Senate Democrats say they delivered for Marylanders that they will immediately feel in their wallets?
I mean, I think part of this Utility Relief Act will be an immediate relief. This is, there are important savings that will be hundreds of millions of dollars that will immediately go back to ratepayers in the form of reduced bills, particularly those low-income Marylanders who will see, in some cases, up to $1,400 a year of annual savings. These are all immediate, these are all policies that will have immediate impact. As we've discussed on the dynamic pricing, we are seeing more and more evidence of things online, of grocery stores online using price discrimination based on individualized data. I think that there will see some, as we pass and finalize the dynamic pricing bill, I think we'll see an immediate impact on the potential of growth for at least personalized price changes as opposed to those that are being driven by market forces. That said, we do know that we are dealing with a federal government that has started an indiscriminate war in Iran, that is now pushing gas prices above $4 a barrel, $4 a gallon. It's likely that we're going to see oil go above 150 and upwards potentially of $200 a barrel for oil. That's going to impact not just gasoline for cars, but diesel prices, which means the goods for services and for plastics and for manufacturing all go up. None of this was necessary. All of it was based on a singular individual's determination to go to war in the Middle East. And so we are all dealing with the consequences of that. And so we're doing what we can with the tools we have at the state level, but we have to be very, very clear about where we're seeing price increases come from. It is the federal government from an indiscriminate war in the Middle East.
Mr. President, I have a question about Senate Bill 417 and Senate Bill 831. On 417, is there a standard of proof?
You got to give me the bill. I'm sorry, I don't know the number.
Senate Bill 417 regarding retaliation by employers for not attending, certain meetings. It seems so subjective. How do you prove that that actually happened?
Look, I think this is the case for anything in law. When there is a situation, it's a fact-based analysis. And so, there is an evaluation based on the facts of the situation. If there's a complaint that's made, it'll be the totality of the circumstances and the facts of what happened that will be the basis of a determination of whether something was done wrongfully.
And as far as Senate Bill 831, in the synopsis, it says blocks groups that pose as unions. Anybody give us an example?
We've not seen the spread of this in Maryland. In other states, we've seen these employer organizations pop up. It is largely an attempt to union bust, and by creating quasi-fake, what would look like collective bargaining entities that are really designed to bypass the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, and protections that we have for organized labor. And we just want to make it clear that here in Maryland, we're not going to let that practice start.
Mr. President, I wanted to know, we've got about a little over a week left in session. Where do things stand on the IG access bill?
Still working through the details. Although I will say, I just recently last week was told that at the beginning of this week that there's an ongoing court case that's involved, at least for the city's situation. So that has complicated matters a little bit as the litigation may be the place where things could play out. We're still looking through a framework, and we have to have additional conversations. We got to get through this energy bill. That's been taking up all of the time and attention this week. I would say probably next week, early next week, is when we're going to start to have conversations with our House colleagues on whether and what an IG solution could look like.
But the litigation is just for Baltimore City, and this bill would impact inspectors general across the state, and we have seen this issue impact other inspectors general.
And I would say just it is largely the situation of what happened in Baltimore City that led to the broader question statewide. And so that's why the litigation involved in the city could also have a statewide impact.
Do you think that issue is dead then?
No, I wouldn't say that. No, I think we're monitoring and we're trying to have conversations here in the last 10 days to see if there's an interim step or, from the very beginning, I've said that this is a little bit more complicated than just saying yes or no. That's the landscape of what data is owned by the public sector and what can and cannot be released under what conditions is a really important conversation. And so if we get to an interim step or if we have to see how the court case plays out, I'm hopeful that we will get to some framework that is viable.
Why is this issue coming up now, though, when inspectors general have been dealing with these types of information for years, and all of a sudden the MPIA rule has been applied all of a sudden? Why now?
I mean, I think this is just the nature of our of our system, that issues emerge and you never know when they will emerge, and you try to deal with them when you can. Obviously, this is not something that we had much notice of coming into session. It wasn't really on our radar at all. And so, we've had an agenda that's focused on affordability and growth and the federal, what's happening with our federal administration, the negative impacts on Maryland. And so this was not something that was top priority. It is important. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to give it the time and attention, but we do have to prioritize with the limited time that we have in the agenda that we know Marylanders care most about.
Sir, in regards to Senate Bill 445, are you guys seeing that?
Sorry, the bill.
445.
The issue.
Yes, the issue. In regards to the firefighters.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No, it's okay.
I just don't know the numbers.
No, it's quite
I used to be better at it. Now it's just a big jumble of.
It's okay. Are you guys seeing that in some counties, overtime pay for firefighters, they're getting the correct overtime pay, but in other counties, it's not happening?
Sure. That is the case, the chair and Jeff, you want to add anything? That is the case that there have been different negotiations across different counties, but it is firefighters that were the only profession in the state that did not have a standardized overtime period. And so that's what this bill really seeks to rectify, is that there should be a common overtime standard across the state of Maryland. And so we think that that will allow for fairer negotiations and for more certainty and predictability about what the standard should be for work hours for firefighters. Anything to add?
Mr. President, what would you say to Democratic I'm sorry, did somebody interrupt something?
You're good.
Okay. What would you say on the energy bill? What would you say to Democratic constituents who feel Republican priorities have had an outsized influence on the bill?
In what ways?
So Republicans have long called for the end to the Empower program. For example, they have also introduced a number of amendments yesterday. Mary Beth Caroz's energy study amendment, the line adjustment provision. These are Republican provisions. The Empower Act has been something Republicans have been talking about ending for a number of years now. They have had due influence on the way that the bill looks now.
I would say I really reject the premise. I think in the Maryland Senate, there's 47 members, there's 34 Democrats and 13 Republicans. Every single senator has a voice, and they represent their constituency. I think that we tried to take ideas from anywhere. Obviously, I am a Democrat, a strong Democrat, and believe deeply in democratic principles, but ideas for how to lower costs can come from any angle, from Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated. And so I think we are open to every idea if it can help lower cost for ratepayers, while also recognizing that we can't solve this with just short-term solutions. We have to look towards the medium and long term. And so I think you saw a number of Republican amendments that would have had a dramatic and draconian, I would say, impact on our energy markets for the medium and long term. Leaving RGGI, decimating the alternative compliance payment system for renewable energy generation. These are policies that on their face can be talked about as immediate savings that will have hugely negative consequences in the long term. And so I would say the other thing is, on those amendments, they only pass if there is bipartisan support. There is no Republican amendment that gets onto a bill because it is a Republican amendment. It gets on the bill because a majority of senators vote for it to be on. And so, we will take ideas from anywhere, but I just would reject the premise that it's a Republican idea versus a Democratic idea. This is a product of the Senate of Maryland, and I think I'm proud of the work that we put forward.
Mr. President, I wanted to ask about the issue of litigation as it affects legislation. You mentioned a few minutes ago that the litigation that's ongoing in the city regarding the IG could be a potential stumbling block or a hurdle to legislation that is before the General Assembly. Earlier this year, the Senate passed out a bill sponsored by Senator Anthony Muse that specifically deals with the issue of churches that are trying to separate from the Greater Methodist Church. That's an issue that is under active litigation and in front of I believe, the appellate court, and yet to be decided. The Senate decided that there was no problem sort of getting ahead of that litigation, but yet this might be a potential hurdle. And so I'm wondering if you can explain how the Senate sort of decides where that line is and when those things affect the legislation.
I think for all of this, it's a case-by-case basis. And I would say, even though that there's litigation for the IG, we are still evaluating whether there is something that we could potentially move forward this year. It is not dispositive that we would not touch it. It just depends on what the status of the litigation may be. On the particular case for the Methodist churches, which is a very, very complex and challenging issue that has been around for about 25 years and infuses both law and religion and practice and institutions. This is something we've passed this bill on multiple occasions. I think this is the third year that we've passed the bill. It has not moved forward in the House. It's a very interesting issue with a complicated past of a trust that was created for a religious entity. This is a weird aspect of Maryland history. We think it's right for the state to get out of the business of being involved in religious institutions. And so to the degree that this would allow us to remove and extricate the state's role in determining a religious organization's disposition of property, that's where I think the Senate landed.
But I think my question goes to why preempt a judicial decision in this case, but maybe perhaps be hesitant about preempting something in another case where the legislature could clearly make their policy objectives known.
Yeah, I'm not aware enough of the specifics of the litigation as it being directly on point for the Methodist case. I would say I think that this is a bill that we've passed on multiple occasions, and so we took it up again.
Mr. President, on the topic of labor, with the budget about to be finalized, I'm just curious, obviously there's a slate of bills here in support of organized labor, but one of the critiques from AFSCME this year was the lack of raises that meet the rate of inflation. So I'm just curious, with a projected deficit that's going to be larger in the years to come, and their concerns about the negotiation process in general with the administration and legislation to change that, what are your thoughts on getting AFSCME and state workers where they'd like to be in the coming years?
Yeah, look, there is no one I think that would want to do more for our state workers than myself and then others in the Senate. I mean, I think we desperately wanted to find avenues to increase us. And yet, we have a constitutional responsibility to balance the budget, and we have priorities that we have to balance. And I know that that will continue to be a core priority. Our public servants are doing incredible work at the state level. I wish that we had an unlimited budget. We don't. And so we've had to govern within our means. I would say the binding arbitration component, initiative that we passed this year, as Senator McRae mentioned, is a really critical feature for the ongoing negotiations in the future. It's a constitutional amendment, and I'm hopeful that the voters of Maryland will move it forward because it is an important right in this process that I think will help govern more predictable negotiations between the executive and our state workers that are represented by AFSCME. And so, you know, I wish we could have done more, but we also have to live within our means, and that's especially the case in the years ahead. So. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us, man.